Right, good afternoon, everybody. So we're going to talk about customer service, which is actually a big issue in every industry, and I think it's particularly coming to fore in the lettings world. So I think it's a very relevant topic. Some industries seem to take this a little bit more seriously than others, but in fact, it's a very serious topic for every business. A lot of changes coming your way, and actually a great way to deal with this is to think from the customer's point of view. So my topic today is enhancing customer service, and I've given it a little subtitle, 7 ways to enhance your customer service. So here they are, and in fact, I'll just hit you with the 7 ways now. First of all, think customer experience. Now, I have underlined the word experience because there's a big difference between customer experience, customer service, customer care, and I'd really like you to think about experience. I'll cover that in some depth. The second way is to recognize that customer experience starts with staff experience. And as a general rule, the service we get outside the organization never exceeds the service we get inside the organization. So my second method is to engage and develop staff. You may have heard this phrase, customer journeys and customer journey mapping. It's very topical because it's recognized that when customers deal with us, they travel through the business. It's the journey of a metaphor is very strong. So my third way is design easy customer journeys. We don't always have to blow the socks off our customer, but if we actually get in their way, if we make life difficult for them, that's a negative. So sometimes just make life easy, do all your jobs, do them on time, do what you say, make the customer journey easy. Linked to that very strongly is the idea of operational excellence. So operational excellence is the bedrock of great customer service. Being easy to deal with is part of it, but also doing things logically, keeping up to date, and not doing things the way you've always done them necessarily. So operational excellence is key. The fifth way is to measure customer satisfaction. Quite often people assume customers are happy, but actually that's a big step to take. We need to measure and get involved with our customers. So way 5, measure customer satisfaction. We don't always get it right, particularly in a large operation, and particularly where you're dealing with something as emotional and powerful as someone's home. And it's important to recognize it is someone's home. Emotion is there, and things don't always go as planned. They should be going in the vast majority of cases as planned, but if they're not, it's very important that we manage complaints well. So that's my 6th way, manage complaints well. And 7, lead by good example. That kind of fits across all of those previous 6 methods. It's about leading from the point of view of having a vision for your organization, your business, your practice, whatever you'd like to call it. It's about good people leadership, and it's about leading yourself well as well, because example is critical to customer service. Staff will take a lead from you and they will think that what you do is fine, it's the way to do things. So lead by example is my 7th way to enhance your customer service. So let's get into these then, and let's talk about thinking customer experience. So the airline industry is a very good illustration of this, because we've all traveled on a flight presumably, and it illustrates the many aspects of customer experience. So if you think about EasyJet, whatever you do think about them, they have 2 jobs. Their first job is to get you from A to B safely. That is their fundamental purpose, traveling in a safe method from A to B. But also they have to ensure you travel enjoyably. So they have to do a great job in a great way. And that to me summarizes customer experience. Because you travel safely, that doesn't mean you can be left hanging around in the terminal. It doesn't mean that they can run the trolley over your feet. And if you lose your bag on the way and you report to the lost property and they say, oh, well, what's your problem? You're alive, aren't you? That's not much consolation. So it's a very stark example that great customer experience is what you do and the way that you do it. And actually, people kind of expect you to do what you do well. It's the way you do it that has a huge opportunity to provide exceptional and memorable service. We can look at this, for example, here in a little picture I saw in a Costa coffee outlet. Sorry, we don't accept Costa loyalty cards here. This is due to us being a franchise. Well, the coffee may taste great, it might be at the right temperature, but this extra aspect of service is failing. So poor customer experience. And this is a design issue because there's a formal sign there saying we don't accept Costa loyalty cards, and the IT is limiting service design. So not a well thought out customer experience. So customer experience is everything we do, and you can see the green quadrant, sorry, the green sector here is pre-purchase. It's before you get into touch with your customers. It's website, advertising, collateral. These are all areas where customers are seeking you out. So website is part of customer experience. You're advertising your brochures. Then the purchase experience, when people are actually dealing with you. Generic phrases here, I haven't customized it to lettings, but what is the range of accommodation you have? Is it well displayed? Product performance in your case could be your colleagues. Parts deliveries are generic as well. And then we come on to what's it like once we've let, and the post-purchase experience. And of course, the classic in the lettings world is that we may work quite hard to sell a property, the rental of a property. We sell a lease or a let, and then do we actually walk the walk? Do we actually follow this up? Do we actually provide a good repairs and maintenance service? Is our paperwork smooth? So we can really see that all the aspects of the brand touchpoint wheel formulate customer experience. And sometimes this phrase customer service talks about sort of human interaction, but we can see from this wheel that it's about human interaction, but it's really about every way you touch your customers. Of course, your customers are those to whom you let and those whose properties you let. So it's also a complex, multifaceted approach for you. Both your customers, both groups have to be satisfied, both have different needs and wants. So there's a touch point there for both sides of that equation. So here we have the components of CX. There's a little bit of jargon there. CX is customer experience. So this is my explanation, what we do and how we do it. What is the technical quality? It's the core, it's what you do. Now, customers expect that to be right, and therefore it has a relatively small impact. Of course, it has a huge cost to you. The functional quality, how you do it, carries a relatively small cost, but it has a huge impact. So we could take ourselves out of the letting industry briefly and go to, say, a restaurant, which is, again, a popular example. The what is the food. You go to a restaurant, what to eat food. However, that doesn't necessarily carry a great impact for you, because you kind of expect the chef can cook. You expect them to have clean cutlery. You expect them to have decent wine. The how does carry a cost, because if you're going to go down this route of providing experience, you're going to have to spend maybe a slight premium on very good staff, on training them, on spending time on having good processes and procedures, maybe just raising your game a little bit there. That has a cost, but it has a disproportionate impact. The how is also very memorable. It links powerfully to emotions. When we talk about experience, we're talking about generating memorable moments which people have a positive association with, and it makes them more likely to return to the business. So this is a fundamental of customer experience. It's both what we do and how we do it. What tends to be very rational, how tends to be very emotional. And as I've said already, you're in a very emotional business because you are dealing with people's homes. It's the foundation of their lives. So if someone comes on the phone about a repair that maybe is taking a little while, to you, you may see that a lot. You think, well, what's the problem? It's just a repair. To them, it could be having a huge impact on their home life. And you never know, the person calling in maybe getting grief from other partners at home, for example, or the kids, and tensions rise. So you are in an emotional business, and therefore remember that customer experience customer emotion are very, very linked. So it's not just a rational world, it's an emotional world too. This is a very famous example to illustrate here, the library experiment. On 2 days in a library, the staff were briefed to behave a little bit differently. On day one, they just did the basic, the what, check the book in, check the book out, no eye contact with the lender, just very motionless core service. On day two, staff were briefed to have a much more human interaction, more empathy, eye contact, having a little chat, using the name on the card. And the interesting thing is an exit survey was done on both days, measuring dimensions such as heating, lighting, the books, attitude of staff, how likely are you to return. So I'll just leave you to ponder for a moment and think which of those 5 factors scored higher on day 2. And the correct answer is all of them. On day 2, the lights scored better, the heating scored better, the books scored better. And this kind of illustrates the emotional connection. And actually, while we're disaggregating customer experience into what and how, as customer experience technicians, customers don't do that. They see you aggregated, and that's really the very heart of the phrase customer experience. Here's another example, a blind test of Pepsi and Coke. In a blind test, this you'd think was a purely rational behavior, wouldn't you? That what does a drink taste like? And in a blind test, Pepsi tastes a little bit better than Coke. It's interesting, this was the Pepsi challenge, and Pepsi advertised this fact that we taste better. But if we bring the emotional into this and say in an open test, what do you taste better? Well, again, just think for a moment, and what do you think that score will be when I reveal? Well, it's 3-1, it is turned upside down. It's the same drink, the same people, but somehow people now think Coke tastes better. This is very much an emotional reaction around the Coca-Cola brand. The brand is built largely in the case of soft drinks like this through emotional connection. Coca-Cola is the real thing. Coca-Cola brings Christmas to us, and so on and so forth. Now, you may personally feel you're not affected by that. It doesn't matter. The population as a whole is, and we see the sales of Coke to Pepsi in the UK of 3-1. Now, that simple table tells you that business is emotional as much as it is rational. Very powerful. This guy gets free Pepsi, but he still goes out and buys his Coca-Cola. And here we see a bottle of Diet Coke from Karl Lagerfeld, so through Harvey Nichols. This is £4 or £5 compared to £1 in Tesco or Morrison or your local CTN. And of course, Coca-Cola build on this, and innovations such as this, actually looking at connecting with people. They estimate the popular names, they put them on the shelf, but you know your customers' names. It doesn't suit everyone, but why not give people a personalized key ring, for example, with their name on? Or using names is very, very powerful. I stay a lot in hotels in my work, and I sometimes go into a hotel room and there's a TV screen. And there's one I stay up a lot in Durham, the Radisson in Durham, and every time I go into my room, it says Dear Beevers. It doesn't say Dear Mr Beevers, it doesn't say Dear Richard. Not that I'm pompous about the use of the word Mr, but it just shows a complete lack of detail. It shows that this is a sort of fairly foolish attempt to personalize. So if you are going to personalize, then personalize very, very well. So this is probably getting a little bit close to home now. These are the cable guys at Virgin Media, and you can see the what and the how here. The what is on the left, it's resolving the customer's issue. So we go into the customer's home, we fix the system, the service. The right-hand column is about behavior, and you can see the top score is do a great job in a great way, a net promoter score, more of which later, plus 74. In the case where we don't resolve the issue and we have a poor behavior, a bad what, a bad how, we have a very poor net promoter score. But in the middle there, you will see that, interestingly, polite, friendly, helpful behavior don't solve the customer's issue, scores better than resolving the issue with rude, unhelpful, lying, fobbing off behavior. So it's totally counterintuitive, isn't it? People are saying, across the board here at large scale, not everyone, people are saying, I prefer it if you don't solve my problem but you're nice to me, compared to you do solve my problem but you're rude. And this kind of insight is important to understand, that the meet, the greet, the way that you listen to people, the way you take on their concerns is so vital in customer experience. So in context, then, you will see that with all these different terminologies, customer experience is everything you do. It's your service quality, it's your product quality, it's your price. And your product quality is, of course, maybe the accommodation that you let, but it's also maybe your repair service. And sometimes people say today that, oh, well, customer experience.
Hello, Richard. Are you still there?
Critical alongside product and price.
Oh, Richard.
Yes, please. I can't see any questions. Am I gabbling on too long?
No, it's not that. It's just that you seem to drop out for about 30 seconds. So if you can go back a little bit to the orange box customer experience. That's the slide, but we lost you a little bit after the first 3 boxes. Hello? Hello, can you hear me, Richard? Hello, Richard? Hello, Richard? Hello, Richard. You seem to be self-muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you were self-muted, so perhaps.
Sorry, I was messing around.
No, that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, carry on from there. That's great. Thank you.
Right, sorry about this, guys. Am I going so far so good?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Great, okay. Right, okay, so we're back here then. So what I'm basically saying, and apologies if I'm repeating myself, I'm saying that customer experience is everything you do. It's service quality, it's product quality, it's price. And I've seen surveys that say that customer experience is taking over from product and price in the customer hierarchy. That's not quite right. What customer experience is your product, is your price, is your service. As I said earlier, it's everything. So customer experience drives customer satisfaction. So customer satisfaction is an outcome, but it's also relative, as illustrated by those 2 boxes, by your mood, by your situation. So customer satisfaction is a relative issue. If you provide the same service to all your customers, you'll get different levels of satisfaction. And it's very important here to sort of turn on its head something that you will have heard since you were a child. Treat people the way you want to be treated yourself. That's bad advice for customer experience. Sure, don't steal, don't kill, it's very extreme, I know. But basically, the 10 commandments hold good. However, treat people the way they want to be treated. So you kind of have to listen to them, assess their mood. And in fact, same person can be in a totally different mood on a different day. Saturday morning, they could be quite relaxed. A Thursday evening late phone call, they could be very, very stressed. So this is part of empathy, engagement, which is a huge part of customer experience. And satisfaction will drive loyalty. And the point about loyalty is it's very, very profitable. If your owners are coming back to you and you're not having to spend on bringing them back to you and promotional campaigns, that's good for business. If your tenants and residents are coming back to you, that's good for business. Constantly recycling your customer base at both ends is very, very expensive. Also, if you're trying to justify premium prices, satisfaction is required. So loyal customers tend to pay a little bit more. They don't haggle quite so hard. They cost less to serve because they get to know your systems. And tenants who've been with you for a while, they fall into the swing of things, and same with owners as well. And the final thing is they will recommend. This is a very powerful thing about high satisfaction, high loyalty, the power of recommendation, where your business is driving itself. You will still have to promote, but a lot of your customers should be coming from referrals and recommendations. So to summarize customer experience, you start with engaged employees, working effective and efficient processes, good technology, And really, technology is critical. We'll come into this a little bit later, but now people do not want lots of paper forms that they have to fill in time and time again. They want technology to be at the heart of your practice. And this creates engaged customers, and the level of engagement will actually drive your profitability. So it's not just about being nice. It's not just about being friendly. There's a very hard edge to customer experience, and it's definitely a strong battleground. Those that believe they're good at this, it's got 80% of companies think they're pretty good at this. But if we go out and ask customers, it's not 80% who say we have a great service, it's 8%. So that takes us to 3 places. 20% of people, yeah, we think we can get better at this. 8% who are really, really good at this, but 72%, 3/4 almost, are not as good as they think they are. And this is a strong complacency gap. And this is a big problem, I think, in UK business, that the people at the top table think their service is much better than it really is. Perhaps some of you run kind of quite small businesses, you're close to the front line, maybe you don't have this complacency. But if you think about some of the big companies that spend a lot of money telling us how great they are, HSBC, O2, Sky, and your experience on the ground, it's very, very different. So it's important to be close to reality. But those businesses that get this right, the believers, as opposed to, sorry, the achievers as opposed to the believers, they get better profits, they get better revenues. So that's the magic I told you about, that they get better revenues, better prices, lower costs, and more referrals.
Hi, Richard. I've got a question.
And it is indeed a way to. Great stuff. Can I click on do I click on it, or do you tell me?
Don't click on it. I'll just ask you it. I've had a question through from Claire, and she's asked, how's the best way to deal with bad reviews on places like All Agents or Trustpilot or any of those sort of like feedback sites?
Right. Well, the best way, and if I'm not, if this is not a facetious answer, is to cut them off at source. And sort of avoid them, but of course that's not real world. Occasionally you will get them, but the thing to do is to face them quickly and honestly and openly. So contact the people, do so online, and if you can, and say, contact them and say, very sorry, apologize, very sorry to hear about that you have this problem. Be very grateful if you would contact me directly so I could deal with this. Now, if you have the contact details, pick up the phone, email them directly. If you don't, you need to ask them to contact you. Now, the way that, you need to get them offline, and actually this is a little bit to stop the washing, the dirty washing in public. But if you think in a retail situation, someone came into your offices and was very concerned or agitated, you would seek to calm them down and maybe get them into a private room. So effectively, that's what you're doing. You have to listen to the issue, and it's very difficult to do this online. Some people can sort of take the online thing a little bit far, and they will look to deal with you online. But I think it's important to say that you keep stressing, let's deal with this offline. But let's suppose we're now into sort of complaint area. There's a little acronym I like to do, which is sort of cool complaints with heat. Cool complaints with heat. So H is here. It's very important that the person has a chance to get their issues off their chest. You have to let them let off steam. It may be on investigation that their issue isn't genuine, but it may well be. But don't give them the benefit of that. Listen. Empathize, put yourself in their shoes. So that's what we mean by the E. Do you think it's really been dealt with fairly? Apologize, always apologize. That's the A in heat. And apology sometimes is considered to be an admission of legal liability, and that's not the case. You can certainly apologize at many levels. You can apologize that this has happened. You can apologize that you've caused problems. And then T, take ownership, take action, fix quickly. Not sure how you stand with ombudsman, but I do a fair bit in social housing too, And one of the issues is that by the time a complaint gets to the ombudsman, it's not the complaint that's the issue, it's the way the complaint is being handled. So it's much cheaper to nip complaints in the bud. And if you have struck up this dialogue, then you may politely ask the complainer to remove the review, or to just put a little note on saying that the review has been handled, and they're grateful. But it's a very good point though, because social media is very, very powerful, and it is important you track what's been said about you. So I hope in this sort of one-way lecturing style, I've given you a couple of tips there. So thank you for that question, Claire. Thank you. So I'll continue. What I'm basically, my proposition is that customer experience in this way is a differentiator by recognizing it, what you do, the way you do it, how much you charge, and it will allow you to stand out from the crowd. And this is critical as your industry comes under a lot of pressure for pricing, fees, many of you which are concerned about, I know. So it's very important that you do give value by taking this holistic approach to customer experience. And I've spoken about satisfaction, I've spoken about loyalty. So satisfaction, if you do what you say in a way that is sensible, you resolve problems, then you will get satisfaction. But loyalty requires something extra. So we want you to either deliver exceptional service as well, or ordinary services delivered exceptionally. So there has to be something exceptional, something maybe astonishing. You have to blow your customer socks off. And actually today in your world, you can actually do this by being reliable, being thoughtful, being empathetic. So loyalty comes from some sort of outstanding service. I'll give you a couple of examples here. Those of you in the South, particularly London, will know Metro Bank. Metro Bank have decided they're not a bank, they're a retailer, and so that looks very attractive, inviting. That logo there looks like a sort of fast food or a quick fit tire place. It doesn't look like a bank because they take the pomposity out of banking. They're friendly, and there you go. They've got no stupid bank rules. They've got some really exceptional services on the left. If you go in and open an account, you'll leave within an hour with your card, your checkbook. So it's a very, very interesting service with, as I've said already, no stupid bank rules. They're human, and that's their credo for their staff. They're not brainwashed, but they're encouraged to live this credo. I won't read it out to you, but this is very powerful stuff because your people need to know what's expected of them. So that's an example of exceptional services, but a simple service like the Wolverhampton Wanderers. Here we've got an error in the shirt. You can see the tweet, someone's complaining. It's upside down. So if you want to do sort of exceptional service, how would you respond to that tweet? Well, I'll give you a couple of moments again to ponder. What would you do? Would you write and apologize? Would you send back a shirt? Would you say, well, keep the upside down one, here's another one? All good stuff, but what about this? Just a little bit of emotion, a little bit of humor, writing back an upside down letter, and I think that will bring a smile to most people's face. So that's just an example of how you can do things exceptionally, which doesn't have to be a huge product service disruption, as in the case of Metro. So I think we've given you a pretty good run through customer experience, and I've used a disproportionate amount of time on that, you'll be glad to hear, because it is the bedrock of improving customer services. Thinking customer experience, what you do, the way you do it, and engaging emotionally with your customers. Now, in any sizable organization, you will have people, and this is your issue here, that it's important that your people are doing the right thing when you're not there. We sometimes talk about having batteries included. So people do the right thing. It's called discretionary behavior. So I hear the phrase empowerment as well, but that's a word that can be criticized for being a little bit too, sort of management consultant speak, bit pompous. So discretion is a great word, giving people the ability to do the right without necessarily asking your permission every time. So they should know the right thing to do. So if we want customers, which 80% are happy, we've got a few issues, we will get them. Some people are neutral about them. If you want customers to look like that, You ain't going to get it if your staff picture looks like that. So essentially, great service starts with great staff. And I've already said earlier that service outside the organization never exceeds service inside the organization. This is the way it works. It's kind of a clinical statement, isn't it? The people, service, profit chain. But your collective behavior as an organization drives your customer's experience. It is about process, it is about product, but fundamentally, the people are the key thing here, because a good person can get over a slightly clunky system. And we saw the power of behavior when we spoke about the library experiment. Behavior drives customers' experience. And again, I've already mentioned customers' experience drives business performance. So a clear link. So again, I'll leave you to ponder what drives your behavior at work, what drives your employees' behavior at work. Well, if you think about that, it's your attitude to your boss, the leadership, not just the people in the boardroom, but your line manager. It's your attitude to your job. And are people thinking about these emotional aspects of their job as well as the functional aspects of their job? I went to a first-class lounge at St Pancras the other day. My train ticket was actually on my phone. My phone wasn't charged. And I went to the first-class lounge and said, I'm sorry, I haven't got my ticket with me. It's on my phone. I need to come inside the lounge and charge my phone. And of course, the person from the railway said, well, I'm sorry, you can't come in here without your ticket. I said, well, it's on my phone. I need to charge. And I said, I'm sorry. She said, I'm sorry, I can't let you in without your ticket. And we were in something of a catch-22 situation. Being the sort of pompous, forthright individual I am, I just walked straight past her, charged my phone, and went outside to show my ticket just as a security card had been called to the case. Now, we settled things down pretty quickly, but I just said, what is your job? And she said, my job is to check tickets. I know I was involved in that case, but I would suggest that someone's job there is to help people have a great journey, a great experience. And if we get our people thinking about what the job is really, which is giving people, in your case, great homes, then it's a little bit different to the sort of tick box mentality. Company, are you a good employer? Are you fair? And do you operate what we call a psychological contract, which is acceptable, as well as an employment contract of terms and conditions? And do people do customer service? Is it in their makeup to do customer service? So that takes us to recruitment, which we'll tackle a little bit later. So essentially, people should feel good about working with you. They should be clear on what your organization is about customer-wise. And they should be really engaged in delivering great experience. And actually, you need to coach them in what good service looks like, which could be the Amaze type of approach which Metro Bank takes. This person here, what do they do? Well, I hear you say he fixes cars. Well, of course, this person fixes distressed people, fixes customer journeys. So again, you don't get a job in the RAC because you're good under a car bonnet. You get a job with the RAC because you're good under a car bonnet and you're good with people. You meet some very stressed people, because breaking down on the M1 when you're on the way to pick up a flight is a very stressful business, just as acquiring a new home is. So many businesses are really in the emotions business, and the RAC make a big point of recruiting the right person to deal with those emotional stress points. We can look at it like this. Which of those two center circles appears bigger? Well, the one on the right appears bigger, but of course they're both the same size. And this is sort of the broken boiler, the lost key out of hours. To you, on the left-hand side, this central issue is just run-of-the-mill. You see this all the time. But to your tenant, your customer, on the right-hand side, that's dominating their life. So it's kind of the ability to look through your customer's eyes and see the big issue. And the RAC is the same. The RAC guy will fix 8 repairs a day. You may be unlucky to break down once a year. So it's about seeing things through the customer's eyes. You tend to get the customers you deserve. So I hate signs like this. We don't deal with abusive behavior, because there's almost certainly something in the way that this organization is designed which is leading to abuse. You don't see this in John Lewis. You don't see this in Pret a Manger. You see this kind of site where there is poor service. It may be, may be challenging for the post office to manage their business, but this is really no solution to tell customers to stop getting frustrated, because we're all people, we all get frustrated. So if you've got people coming to your offices behaving a little bit abusively, then sometimes a very small percentage of the population can be abusive, but you have to look and say, well, what are we doing to annoy our customers? So I think that's another little catchphrase for you. You get the customers you deserve. And it's important that your people can deal with those emotional issues and actually prevent them. So we're now on to my third method, designing easy customer journey. So I'll return to the notion of the restaurant. Remember that great night out. So if you can all think about when you went to a restaurant recently for a social occasion, and I'll ask you, what were the moments of truth? And this is another key issue in customer service, customer experience, a moment of truth. And a moment of truth is a judgment point. It's where you make a decision. It's a gate through which your customers pass. And essentially, do you pass or fail? So in the airline industry, it's when you arrive at check-in, and do you get a grumpy person or do you get a happy person? It's a judgment point, as I've said. So in a restaurant, what are the moments of truth? So just think about that for a moment. The moment of truth is when you arrive, the meet and greet. It's when you're taken to your table. Or do you want to be taken to your table? Do you want to have a little moment languishing in the bar? It's when the bill arrives. It's when your food arrives. It's when you visit the bathroom. So we can put all these together. Yes, that can happen too, can't it? We put all these together and we get what we call a customer journey map. This one is expressed as flights of an arrow. So it's very simplified for this purpose, but you call the restaurant, you arrive at the restaurant, you order a drink, you order a meal, you eat the meal, you pay the bill. And you can actually recognize that, how do you manage these points? Or do you just sort of pretend that, we make it up as we go? Well, you can actually plan for both rational excellence, good processes, but also emotional excellence. When people call the restaurant, how do you meet and greet them? I've called restaurants and I get a very dour voice. Well, we look forward to seeing you, and yeah, thank you. It doesn't fill you with joy. It doesn't tick that emotional box. You arrive at the restaurant. What is the meet and greet? Yes, please. Yes.
Yes, I've got a question here from Phil. He says, with that in mind, what tips have you got as the quickest way to build rapport with a customer to make them feel at ease and that they're having a good?
Okay. Well, one thing is the physical presence, because people's state, as we call it, is determined by their environment. So it's very important to have a comfortable physical environment. So if they come into your offices or your retail premises, it should be comfortable, welcoming, maybe some seating. You will notice that the big players in this game, such as O2, that you will sit alongside them. You will see that in Apple Store, people aren't suited and booted. So these are environmental factors. But when you're talking about face-to-face, it's getting at the same height as them. So if you're sitting down, stand up. It's about, say, sitting alongside, not confrontationally across a table. Plenty of eye contact, plenty of smiling. Now, we get into the finer points of this. You will find if you get on very, very well with someone, your body language will start to come into sync. You will start to adopt the same shape. You'll have an open shape, a closed shape, or you'll have leaning forward, leaning back. You'll have crossed limbs. Now, it works such that if you actually start mimicking, and that's a slightly negative term, but if you match body language, you will get on with people much quicker. Also, start using the same language as them. So if they start talking about a contract, you talk about a contract. If they're talking about agreement, you talk about agreement. So if they say, well, what do we have to do to create a contract? And you start saying, well, the rental agreement will be available by email. You're mixing languages up there. So it's about matching at every level, body language, pace and tone. So again, very quickly, I've done a sort of 2-day body language course there, but it's essentially about matching, making people feel comfortable. And you can give yourself a start on this by the environment and your dress. So it might be that you, depending on your customer group, you might say, well, it's polo shirts as opposed to shirts and ties. So that, you know, just matching, making people feel comfortable. So hopefully, Phil, that's helpful to you. All of these things, of course, you can Google. There's a wealth of stuff online. And I think maybe, Jane, I don't know whether you provided my email address, but if anyone wants any references to more info, bung me an email and I'll do that. So the point about the journey is it allows you to plan this, and it allows you to create emotional high points, physical high points, where you start to make life easy and enjoyable for the customer. If you look at the bottom row of my flight, you will see white space. What normally happens between calling a restaurant and arriving at the restaurant is white space. So we look to fill white space. So that's something you can do in the customer journey. So for example, if you book an appointment for viewing, you could fill the white space by sending a text. Look forward to seeing you at 10 a.m. Now that shows that you're thinking. It gives the customer a warm glow, but actually it will cut the incidence of no-shows. So there's a sort of practical and emotional link to that. The other thing is leave the restaurant. We know how important first impressions are, but actually last impressions are equally important. So when customers leave your premises, make sure you give them a very, very friendly, positive farewell. And again, not all customers are equal. So if you have someone coming in who maybe who's got a portfolio of property they want you to take over, definitely walk those people to the door. Walk outside with them, shake hands, wave them into the distance, and that builds rapport, but it also gives them a very positive final experience as well as the opening. So last impressions are just as important as first impressions. So here's an example here. This doesn't actually cost any more. This is a Malmaison hotel, and instead of on the left, do not disturb, we've got just a little bit of fun. And instead of service my room, this could get messy. So it's part of their brand values, I know, but this is the sort of thing which is emotional, it's quirky, and you can spice up the journey with just a little bit of fun and games. So method 4 links on to customer journeys, and it's deliver operational excellence. Now, I'm not going to start getting into telling you people how to run your businesses, but I just will say, look at Amazon. Amazon is a very, very run business, and they listen obsessively to customers. At their meetings, they have something called the empty chair. They have a chair with no one sat in it, and that is the customer. So the empty chair is the customer. So at your meetings, have an empty chair, and you can turn and say, well, what would the customer say? What would the customer think? Because all too often in boardrooms, we're thinking about profit and loss, bank accounts. Are we thinking about what the customer thinks? So Amazon is obsessive, it takes feedback, it listens, it improves its business. So your business processes are fundamental. I always believe that good people can overcome poor processes, and actually it's really important to be a little bit flexible here. However, why frustrate your people with poor processes? So do work on them. Here's a little example from the Ritz Carlton. Very, very good example of great customer experience, great customer service. And they have a little character called Mr Biv. And they're encouraged at meetings to say, have you met Mr Biv? Well, Mr Biv is an acronym which stands for mistakes, rework, breakdowns, inefficiencies, and variations in work processes. So again, at the meetings, it just takes away the formality. You can encourage people to identify any aspect of Mr Biv. And if you serve a room at the Ritz Carlton, if you're in housekeeping, you get a significant checklist, 130 odd points. And it's amazing to me that, when I've been involved in letting or renting properties, how often I see the same issue cropping up. Checklists, use them. The airline industry is a great user of checklists. It may frighten you to know that the NHS isn't so. And in fact, people can end up having the wrong operation or a tool left in an unfortunate place when the body's sewn up. I know some of these examples are a bit gruesome, but checklists are vital. They save you time and they create a great impression of efficiency. So rule number 4, method number 4, operational excellence. So all of this is great, but how are you doing? Are you overkilling? Are you not getting it right? You must measure customer satisfaction. And this is the sort of method in vogue at the moment, something called Net Promoter Score. And you can just ask this question and a little follow-up. How likely are you to recommend Smith & Co to a friend or colleague? In this case, it's Telco. And it's a scale of 0 to 10. 0 means not at all likely. It's not 1 to 10, because if it was 1, there's some chance. But 0 is unequivocally no way. Extremely likely is 10. So we want people to ask on this scale. And then we say, well, why do you say what you say? Now, being in the business you're in, you don't want to survey people to death. And this simple 2-point questionnaire can be very, very powerful. Your score tells a lot. The reasons tell a lot. You don't necessarily need a huge structured survey. The customer or the tenant or your landlord will tell you in their own language. Now, this recommend Net Promoter Score question has come from research done in the States about 15 years ago. And I won't go too much into the science, but essentially this is bound to be a very strong predictor of loyalty. So your propensity to recommend now is a strong indicator of your loyalty. And we've been through the reasons why loyalty is important. It's profitable. So the maths works out as such that those who give you 9 and 10 are extremely likely to be loyal. They will refer, they will spread great news about you, they will drive growth. 7s and 8s, they're happy, but they're not particularly enthusiastic. You've done nothing wrong, but you haven't blown their socks off. Your problems are your 0 to 6s. They really, really don't like you. They're hostages, they're trapped, they're using you because they have to, maybe, and they don't really want to stay. So your aim is 9s and 10s. And if you put a big group of these together, that's a sort of Net Promoter Score. So if in this case you had 26% promoters, 14% detractors, we ignore the neutrals for the calculation and we get a Net Promoter Score of plus 12. Your highest score is plus 100. It's unheard of. Very, very, I've never seen a business with a Net Promoter Score of plus 100. Your worst score is minus 100. So it's a technical point, but NPS is measured as an absolute, not as a percentage. So in this case, it's plus 12. Your job is to identify the detractors and switch them around. So if someone gives you a score of 0 to 6, you should be on that phone. You should be saying, what's the problem? You should be dealing with it. You should be opening up lines of communication. But over time, this is a great one to track, your Net Promoter Score. And it's that work you do with the score that counts. You're analysing the score, because essentially you don't fatten a pig by weighing it, do you? You actually feed it, you give it a good regime, and that's the score. So satisfaction is part of a balanced diet of good service design, great behaviour, listening to customers. There's probably an awful lot more to talk about on customer satisfaction measurement, but that's just an illustration. But now, of course, you can use all these tools online, by text messaging, but essentially it's important to ask people. And you can pick parts of the process. You can talk about the letting process. You can talk about the repairs process. You can talk about the exit survey. How have you found it dealing with us? One thing I know from social housing is that the major determinant of resident satisfaction is the repairs and maintenance service. And I have to say that as an industry, we're pretty poor at that. So that my knowledge of customer satisfaction is that there's a strong link between a good repairs and maintenance service and overall satisfaction and propensity to stay and keep working with you. So we move on to 6. So when problems come, and we've got onto this to some degree through Claire's question, manage complaints well. Complaints are a fact of business life. If you've got no complaints, then you're either a saint or you're not listening. Because these things will happen. So what's important is you listen. So why is a complaint to you? Just leave you to mentally ask yourself that question. Well, the Institute of Customer Service defines it as an expression of dissatisfaction, whether justified or not. So it's important, and it's easy to dismiss people as moaners, complainers, being unreasonable. But if that's their opinion, that's their opinion. It's really important to thrash this out. But in the case of many industries, and I think that this would be true in your case, we can see that at the top level there, no problem experience, about a half, problem experience just under a half. Most people don't complain. So we follow the trail at the bottom there. 54% had a problem. Most people don't complain. Now, this is the point about emotional and rational. If it's rational, if it's a broken tap or a boiler gone down, that may not be a complaint. That might be a repair being reported. But if someone isn't just happy about the way they've been handled or the way they've been treated, they're not likely to complain. And actually, in this example here, only 12% of people with a problem complained. So this is the iceberg. You're not getting any complaints, really? Or is it just that you're not learning about them? But interestingly, in this study here, it's a classic landmark study from 40 years ago, no problem experienced, 92% likely to recommend. The 12% who complained and had their problem well handled, 96% likely to recommend. More likely to recommend than people who never had a problem in the first place. So complaint management is critical. It's not the end of the road. It can be an opportunity to strengthen your relationship and show that you take your customers seriously. We all know in life that things won't go perfectly all the time. The mark of your business is how well you deal with people when things don't go well. And at the bottom there, the silent ones, they're not complaining, they're just walking. They won't walk immediately if they're on an agreement with you, but the point is they could just start making life awkward for you and getting a little bit of revenge. And we call those hostages, where they don't want to be there, they're there, and they start exhibiting hostage or saboteur behavior. So finally, lead by good example. And I think we kind of mean this at a lot of different levels. First of all, we know your world is changing. We've got issues about charges, we've got issues about legislation, we've got issues about compliance. Your world is full of change. And here's a quote: "This is an age of change. Never before in the history of mankind have so many and so frequent changes occurred." Does that sound like your life today? Well, a clever chap said this in 1922. The world has always been like this. So please don't get too upset about your turbulent world, because just about every industry is going through this and really has always gone through it. An analogy I like to bring is, if you want a customer service six-pack, think about getting a gym six-pack. This gym is in the States, as you will notice. There's a lot of lessons here. On the 1st of January this year, a lot of people started the gym. They'll have paid their 40 quid a month. What have they got out of it? 80% of people, very, very little. So it's the same with business change. 80% of people who set out to improve customer service fail for all the same reasons. They don't keep it up. They don't work hard. They don't realize actually it takes a lot of effort and a lot of sustained effort to get the customer service six-pack. So keep it up if you want to improve customer service. A little and often, keep everyone involved and share your successes. But as leaders, remember this: when trying to influence people, get your people to raise their game. Example is not the main thing, it's the only thing. So lead from the front. Practice what you preach. The American phrase is walk the walk. And we don't want you to do this. I don't know whether this is working. Is this working across the airwaves, Jane? We don't like this kind of leadership.
Yes,
it doesn't even look.
We can see the poor penguin being slapped.
Doesn't even look. So leadership is about connecting with your people. It's about working alongside them. And staff experience follows many of the patterns of customer experience. So, recruit people who are going to do this well. Don't make yourself have too hard a job by recruiting the wrong people. So to have a great recruitment process. So in theory, you want someone with the ethics of Mother Teresa, the IT skills of Bill Gates, the charisma of Britney Spears, and the business brain of Rupert Murdoch. But if you don't run a good recruitment process, you'll end up with the charisma of Bill Gates, the ethics of Rupert Murdoch, the IT skills of Mother Teresa, and the business brain of Britney Spears. So recruit the right people. We say recruit for attitude, train for skills. And you thank people. You said, thank you last time, I'll work late next time. Because if you don't thank them, the opposite's true. You're rude about my tie, I will sabotage your entire IT system. So get people thinking positively about working for you. Encourage them, thank them, praise them, explain what's necessary, and that's your leadership skills. So there's the 7 ways to enhance your customer service. we've done it in a business that I've been in for 35 years. So I hope I've not cut too many corners, and I'll leave the door open for you to email me if you've got any more queries. And just thank you for listening, and wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Richard. I've got, well, it's more of a comment really from Rob. He says he deals with maintenance, and he says that landlords actually have the final say over whether a maintenance issue can be addressed quickly or even addressed at all. And, you know, sometimes the agent is the piggy in the middle.
That's absolutely true. So I think that this is about being fairness, and we see this kind of thing in complaint management in general. We know that if we were to measure the satisfaction of a tenant who had been dealt with in the same way and they weren't getting the repair they wanted, compared to those who were getting the repair, the satisfaction would definitely be lower, even though you've dealt with them fairly. But I think it's about good communication. It's about ensuring, without wishing to pass the bucket, I think you need to make it clear that the decision is the landlord's. And I think you need open, honest communication. And I think you need to go into bat with the landlord and put the case. And if you really believe that this repair is justified, this is where another side of selling comes out. And I think you have to bat for the tenant. But when you don't get the answer that maybe you want and the tenant wants, I think you then have to sort of explain it, not just say it's a no. I think you have to start saying why, and say you'll keep an eye on it and you'll listen in future. So, you know, these are intractable problems, Rob, I think, but it's a good observation. And I think all you can do is manage the process. There is no silver bullet.
Sure. We've had a few people sort of sending through some thank you very much, Richard, good presentation, Merry Christmas, and all of those sort of things. So
that's very kind. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much, Richard, and thank you very much to everybody who attended today. I'll send you out a link to the recording after the session, and I'll also send you a contact email address that you can reach Richard on. Okay.
Yeah, just a little advert. I spoke at the NALS conference in South London a couple of months ago. I've been invited to York in the spring, so if you a NALS conference goes, great. If not, change your ways, get up there, get up to York, and I'd love to see you at the conference. Thanks very much, everyone, again.
Okay, that's lovely.
Merry Christmas.
Okay,
bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.